This is just a really short video of the brand new horse property, and hopefully it'll serve to show people who are living far away how we have the horses set up now so they can see Sage and Joe are in a good home, even if the structure is a little more basic. And also for a few friends who are thinking of setting up their own horse properties, just wanted to show you a little bit of what we did. So the first thing is shopping for a property and picking out where you're going to put your animals. And obviously part of that for me came down to a choice of house. So I ended up choosing a property that didn't have a barn on it at all. I have another friend who moved to a much flatter property that had a barn with water and electricity to it, and she's currently living in a yurt. And I think she's very happy with that. But I guess I'm a little selfish, and personally I wanted a house and not a yurt. And so in my price range I ended up choosing a property that had no horse facilities whatsoever. So the first step was site prep. The horses needed to go down here past the house, mostly because over here past that apple tree is the well. And the other location was much closer to the road, but it was also close to the well, and that just wasn't going to work. So here they are, very far from the road. And I have to say that the biggest lesson I've learned is that a barn needs a driveway, whether it's an existing driveway or its own driveway. But that's where hay is being delivered to, and ideally grain and shavings and all of that stuff. It's where your water's going into, it's where the power lines are going into, most likely. And for us, we realized that the soil was totally clay soil, and I didn't realize that until after I bought the property. But that meant that we had to have a lot of stone delivered to prep the site for their little run-in shed. And so as you can see, there's these lovely ruts through the entire lawn, because that became the driveway for the barn. So the best thing in a lot of ways is a very level site to put your structure. That means that you'll have a lot less site prep. And I'm hoping that this setup is kind of temporary, but we might need to use it for a few years until I have the budget for a larger barn. And so we had a more level spot by that lilac tree if we had pulled the barn a little bit further forward. But the previous owner used that as lawn, and if you look at where the fence line is for my neighbor who's putting up her own horse property, it made more sense to keep the fence line in line with hers just for aesthetic reasons, which meant that the site was not as level. So we ended up putting down landscape fabric to deal with the clay. The clay was so bad it was gumming up all of our shoes while we were putting up the fence. We were getting like an inch of clay on the bottom of our shoes, and it was very slippery, and we were all sliding around in it and just trying to get things done. And I just had these nightmare visions of the horses slipping in it and falling down too. So one thing I would certainly advise is that when you're looking for a horse property, get the soil tested. Because I had kind of checked it, just dug a little into the lawn and checked with my fingers, but certainly did not understand how much clay was here until it was raining and we were walking around in it. Hi, Joe. There's Joe in her new home. So I think we got about 16 tons of stone delivered. I think it was about $11 a ton. Good girl, go ahead and drink. And then we also got stay mat delivered, which is basically stone dust, which the horses will pack down with their hooves. You pack it yourself as best you can beforehand, but they'll pack it down with their hooves and make a really nice hard surface that's not as hard as concrete, but it certainly sheds water and makes for a good durable surface. And it is, according to all the engineers in my life, all about water. And so one of the reasons that we didn't go wider with the pasture is that water flow will happen over here down this hill. And if you look behind me, there's this huge downhill slope to the barn, which means all the water is going to run this way. And so what we did was we built up the soil just a little bit in front of the fence line, and we'll probably do more of that next year to try and divert the water over here and away from the barn.